We have lots to discuss here in today's video, including all kinds of NHL trade rumors as things seem to be heating up here. We should see some deals hopefully soon. We have trade rumors today around the Montreal Canadiens and their interest in members of the St. Louis Blues, as well as the Nashville Predators and some of their players being linked to teams like Montreal, New Jersey as well. We also have some speculation around the Toronto Maple Leafs having their eye on a member of the Calgary Flames and some talk around Vancouver and Philadelphia. We also have news from the NHL waiver wire, lots of injury updates and roster moves as well, coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have plenty of NHL news and rumors to take a look at here today. We'll start first with a quick update from the NHL waiver wire. We had a couple of players on waivers yesterday, including a player that was on for contract termination. Both of those players cleared, so there was no claims. One player can be released from his contract. The other player can be reassigned to their minor league affiliates. Now, today we do have a little bit of new waiver activity, but nothing that should see a claim. The New York Rangers have defenseman Brandon Scanlon on waivers. He was a player that ended up getting injured during the preseason, during training camp, so he's never gone through the waiver process. He would have been, obviously, wasn't expected to make the Rangers roster, would have been one of their minor leaguers. But he couldn't go down because he ended up going on season opening injured reserve. He's just now getting healthy, so he can now clear waivers and go down to the minor. So I would suspect he's going to clear just because really he doesn't seem like it'd be a player that would likely to be claimed and a player that would have likely cleared during the end of training camp when all the roster cuts were being made. So we'll find out tomorrow for sure. But as of right now, that is your waiver wire activity for today. A bunch of injury updates and some roster moves. A few updates around the Ottawa Senators. One, they are expected to have Artem Zub back in the lineup tonight as they do battle with the St. Louis Blues. Zub missed their last game against the Rangers. It was the first game that he had missed. It was a day-to-day injury, whatever it was. We're not sure. He played the full game. Previous to that against Montreal, there wasn't anything too obvious, so it obviously couldn't have been anything too serious, and he's back tonight. The Senators have also recalled Hayden Hodgson, and he will be in the lineup as well. They unfortunately got not a great update, but it could have been a worse update on Shea Pinto. Shea Pinto, of course, one of their top centermen, plays in all situations and plays a lot of minutes, is going to be out for around 2 weeks, maybe a bit more, according to head coach Travis Green. Didn't really elaborate too much on the injury, but we know it's lower body. It was either a knee or an ankle. Not quite clear exactly what it was, but Green confirmed that he doesn't need surgery of any kind. In approximately 2 weeks is his recovery time. That gets him kind of close to Christmas. There's 1 or 2 games that in 2 weeks before the Christmas break where they play the Sabres and the Bruins, I believe. Possible we could see a return there, but if it ends up being a little bit more than 2 weeks, then maybe he doesn't come back until after Christmas or between Christmas and New Year's once they resume play after the holiday break. We'll have to wait and see, but those are your Sens roster moves for today. The Penguins have reassigned Yona Coppin to the American Hockey League after clearing waivers. The Capitals today, we don't know the exact extent, but Ryan Leonard is injured and is likely going to be missing some time. Last night's game between the Washington Capitals and the Anaheim Ducks led to a huge collision from former Ranger captain, new member of the Anaheim Ducks as of last year, Jacob Trouba, who, of course, has a reputation for laying big hits. It happened behind the net. Leonard's going around the Ducks net. He ends up looking the opposite way. So he's skating this way with his head looking this way, kind of scrunches down a bit because of the way he's positioned and is not watching the puck, doesn't see Trouba coming, and Trouba absolutely levels him. Now, there's a lot of chatter on social media today about Trouba headhunting and Trouba, laying a dirty hit and all that. And I see a lot of posts from Capitals media around that. I've been critical of Jacob Trouba in the past. He does seem to have the hits, like the big hits, down for the most part, where he can kind of walk the line but not cross it in some cases. There have been some of his hits in the past, though, that I thought did cross the line and went way too far. This one, I don't think does. And I know there's going to be probably some Caps people that don't agree with this because Ryan Leonard's a young player and get absolutely rocked. But for one, you made yourself small and you got the puck and you're looking the opposite way that you're skating. So you put yourself in a really bad spot. And in my opinion, I think Trouba kind of does let up here just a little bit. and even scrunches maybe down just a smidge to try not to make head contact. But there's definitely some contact with the head there. But I don't believe that it's really Trouba's fault. You could see the hit being lined up for, enough ahead, but like Leonard's not paying attention. Like he's got himself in a really bad spot with his head the opposite way, makes himself small, put himself in a really bad spot. That's why, as of right now, we've heard nothing from the Department of NHL Player Safety, and I don't suspect that we will. So it's unfortunate. Ryan Leonard's a talented young hockey player. I hope he's not injured too badly. It could be a concussion. It's really difficult to say. He did leave the game, didn't return. But, in my opinion, that is just as much Leonard's fault for putting him in a really bad situation, more than anything else. That's the biggest problem with that hit. At least that's what I think. But like I said, and I've been critical of Trouba in the past. So for anybody who comes on here saying that I'm just defending Trouba all the time or whatever like that, if you got to know the history here, if you've been around and watching my channel for any kind of length of time, you'd know that I've been not a fan of some of Trouba's hits before. And I'm not afraid to say when I think it's a good hit, clean hit, unfortunate hit, call it whatever you want. I'm not afraid to give it to you straight. I don't care who the player is. And that's just my honest opinion. I think Trouba does what he can here, but Leonard put himself in a really bad predicament and got absolutely rocked for his troubles. So I hope the kid learns from the hit that you have to be watching and have your head on a swivel, and you can't be putting yourself in those spots, because I really think Trouba does do his best to not make it any worse than what it's going to be. But you can tell that even with, I think, at least I believe there's a little bit of a let up there. But even with that, it's still, a violent hit. There's no doubt about that. So let me know what you think. But that's why I don't think we've heard anything from player safety on that situation here today. Toronto Maple Leafs, we got an update on Joseph Woll from head coach Craig Berube. And tell me if you've heard this before. He says Joseph Woll will be out probably about a week. We're hopeful it doesn't turn into anything too long. Yep. I'm pretty sure he said the same thing about Anthony Stolarz. And he's been out several weeks now. Hasn't skated. Yeah. So we know that they've been pretty secretive, I don't know what you want to call it, on their injuries. And they're not the only team that does this. I'm not calling out the Leafs because, to be honest, look at the injury to Pinto in Ottawa that I just talked about. They said absolutely nothing about what the actual injury was, just an approximate timeline. But I find even in Toronto, sometimes it's even worse than that. You get like a day-to-day or a not too long type of answer, pretty vague, but then it ends up being several weeks. So hopefully for Woll and the Leafs' sake, it doesn't turn out to be longer, but just with their history and giving updates, it just makes you wonder. Not a lot of injuries, especially with him, where it looked like it could be like a groin or a knee, something in that lower region. A lot of that stuff doesn't just take a week, so it's really difficult to say, but let me know what you think on the Leafs. For now, it's Hildeby's net, and hopefully they don't get any more injuries because they're in a pretty tough spot now with goaltending. The Rangers have also returned Brendan Othman to the American Hockey League and recalled Yaroslav Chemlar. So those are your roster move injury updates for today. On the rumor mill, we're going to take a look at a variety of things. We'll start with news from Elliotte Friedman talking about the Philadelphia Flyers and the Vancouver Canucks. Of course, we know Kiefer Sherwood in Vancouver is one of the hot attractions on the trade market right now. Sure sounds, very, very, very likely that the Canucks are going to end up moving him. They're obviously right at the bottom of the NHL standings. Things are not going well. And it seems like they're definitely going to be sellers. How deep it goes, we don't know. We know there's a variety of veterans that are reportedly available. We're waiting to hear more about Quinn Hughes, but I think that's not a decision that's been made just yet. But Sherwood is a player of interest to the Flyers. Of course, former coach Rick Tocchet knows this player, knows how he plays, knows how impactful he can be at times. So there is believed to be interest there, according to Friedman, which is not shocking. We've mentioned the Flyers and other updates from other reporters and even what Elliotte said in recent days here on the channel. But one thing he did end up saying that we hadn't discussed before was the fact that in those discussions that have taken place, I don't think trade talks have gone too deep by the sounds of things between the two clubs, but they've had what it looks like there's some level of conversation, and it sounds like the Vancouver Canucks have asked about Owen Tippett. Friedman says that Tippett is a player that the Canucks seem to have interest in return if they're going to do a deal with Philly for Sherwood, but that the Flyers don't seem to be ready to be able to do that just yet. Now, I find that interesting because Tippett is a name that we had heard in the rumor mill earlier in the season, that there was some appetite from Philly's perspective to maybe consider moving that contract. Of course, they signed him to a longer-term deal. Sounded like they were kind of having a little bit of buyer's remorse, a little bit of second thoughts. If they could get a good player in return, that they might do the deal. And maybe it's a case of where each player is at in their career, maybe not a one-for-one deal. They'd have to be certain that they could extend Sherwood. And right now, we believe from what we've heard is that the Canucks have not given permission to other teams to have conversations with he or his agent about an extension. So therefore, that makes it challenging to guarantee that you're going to be able to do that. And if you can't, maybe you don't want to give up a player with term that you're, not quite sold on moving yet in Tippett. So we'll see if those conversations lead to any further movement. There could be other players maybe on the table or not, but there's a long list of suitors for Sherwood, and it shouldn't be any surprise that Tocchet and the Flyers are indeed one of them. Now, another interesting piece of news today as well from RG.org and Jimmy Murphy, talking about how the Calgary Flames are getting interest on Blake Coleman. He says that the heavy interest is about two teams that are really interested, one being the Toronto Maple Leafs and GM Brad Treliving, more Calgary Flame players. Of course, Blake Coleman, we know, is a pretty solid, well-rounded player, pretty good two-way guy. He can be a solid 20 goal scorer at times. Certainly a guy who plays the right way, plays hard, has good speed, good defensively, can kill you penalties. There's a lot of different things that Coleman can do, and because of that, the fact that he does have Stanley Cup pedigree on his resume now, and has for a few years, he became a pretty attractive option. I mean, when the Lightning got him out of New Jersey, there was certainly, they paid a good price for it, and he paid off well. At one point, when the Lightning were winning Stanley Cups, I mean, it feels like a long time ago now, but that third line that they had, which was obviously, guys like Coleman and Yanni Gourde were a big part of that. They were essential to those guys winning. They played such a critical role in helping shut down the other team's top offensive players, killing penalties, just doing a lot of the dirty work. So you can understand with teams like Toronto and Ottawa and other teams that are kind of up and coming, trying to, become the cup contender. In the case of the Leafs, I mean, they've been trying to get over the hump for a while. And really, if you look at the strategy of new GM, well, relatively new GM in the grand scheme of things, Brad Treliving, again, feels like that move happened a while ago now too, and I guess in a way it has. But if you look at Treliving's history in Toronto in the last couple of years that he's been there, certainly have made an effort to try to bring in some guys with a lot of experience, leadership, some cup pedigree to their name. So, I mean, a guy like that would be interesting, plus somebody that, he's seen before on other successful teams. So, we'll see. The latest intel out of Calgary that we had heard on Coleman probably about a couple of weeks ago now was that he was a player that was definitely getting interest, just like Kadri and some of the other vets on that team. But it wasn't really a sure thing that the Flames wanted to move him. So in those situations, if you really want to get them to move, sometimes you have to overpay. The thing with the Maple Leafs and making any kind of acquisition, I think they're going to have a tough time finding a really good player to add to their roster because they just don't have the assets to trade. They don't have much in the way of draft picks and young players that they really would be interested in moving. They only have a couple of good younger players that are still, sort of in that prospect phase, whether it's Cowan or Danford, which they believe, and the rumor is that they don't really want to move those guys. Nick Robertson's a name that might be more attractive now because he's had a decent part of the start to the year. But again, I think a player that they ended up counting on more than they expected and probably don't really want to do that now. So as much as the interest is there, and when it comes to the Calgary Flames, it seems like there's a Toronto tax on any kind of move. It feels like because of the history with Treliving that they want more out of Toronto than just about any other team that they will deal with and prefer to send their players somewhere else. So we will see where things go, what things materialize, but definitely a case of the interest appears to be quite high, according to to Murphy on that report. So we'll see where things go. Ryan O'Reilly in Nashville, definitely another player to keep your eye on. The latest intel there says that New Jersey might be a team to watch. The Devils have been struggling as of late. Could we see a move there to maybe shake things up and add something to that lineup with Jack Hughes being out long term again? They shouldn't be tanking or really having a real rough go because of one player. A lot of teams can sustain those losses, but the Devils seem to have had a tough time, and I'm not really sure you can really blame it on Hughes' absence. There's been a variety of things going on there in New Jersey that I would think you can point to, but you got to wonder if some kind of a injection move, could be coming. O'Reilly could be somebody who helps the center depth and adds a strong two-way player to the mix, and lots of speculation that he appears ready to move out of Nashville, but again, is Barry Trotz ready to pull the trigger? You seem to get conflicting reports there on him, so we'll see. There was a lot of other reports suggesting that Montreal was really monitoring O'Reilly and was interested there as well, but again, difficult to say for sure what goes down. And speaking of Montreal, could we see a significant deal between the Habs and the Blues? TSN's Darren Dreger alluded to the fact that the Habs are definitely keeping tabs on a few of the Blues players. We know these two teams have completed a deal recently with the Logan Mailloux, Zach Bolduc trade that we saw in the summer. And there is speculation that Montreal is considering a goaltending shuffle. Haven't been pleased with the inconsistent play of Montembeault this year. They're trying to take the next step, and generally speaking, they're having a decent start to the year. It's not like this team is in trouble, but the standings are so tight that any team right now that goes on a winning streak is going to have a shot at being right at the top, and any team that has any kind of sustained losing streak of even 2 or 3 games can fall in the standings really fast. And if Montembeault's games are mostly losses, then they can't bank on that. That's not good, and they don't want to have too much pressure on Dobush to play too much. It seems like when that happened before is when he struggled. So clearly, a goaltending move is rumored to be heavily considered. But again, the asking prices are high. Not a lot of assets on the market that they really like, but some say that they do have their eye on Binnington, who's on a contract year, most likely going to the Olympics. Could be an opportunity to kind of rejuvenate him. So, we'll see. And then, of course, they were linked to Jordan Kyrou heavily dating back to the summer when his no move clause kicked in. There was some talk that kind of cooled down. But again, they appear to be, with all the injuries between Doc and Newhook and Laine, that they may be looking for a higher end top 6 forward. They have the assets compared to most teams to pull off a bigger move. And Dreger alluded to the fact that it seems like they sure might have interest in both of these players. Now, obviously, a deal of that magnitude would be expensive, and the Blues are going to want a few significant pieces coming back. But the Habs are flush with draft capital. They have lots of interesting prospects that have not yet made it to the NHL. Top of that list would probably be David Reinbacher, and they have others, Hage, and a few others. There's the Russian guy as well that they got in the second round. Like they've got a good amount of prospects still coming. And then you throw in, looking at their existing blue line, something that between Jackeye and Struble that maybe one of them eventually goes. And then if you look at the guys in the forward group that are rehabbing right now, could one of them be included? Would the Blues have interest in a Doc or a Newhook, or even a Laine for that matter? If they make a move and bring in another scorer, there might not be room for all 3 of those guys when they get healthy. So again, hard to say exactly what a trade package looks like, but knowing that there's interest in both players, they have the assets to pull it off. It's the scary part for teams in that Atlantic Division. If they're, you're Toronto, Montreal, you're Tampa, you're Florida, you're Boston, you're, kind of weighing out what you're going to do for your own team. And then if Montreal to pull off something significant, it could send waves through the division to kind of shake things up and could instantly make them more of a favorite to come out on top. I mean, at this, like I said, they're having a good year, but that would kind of, allow them to make a bold move to kind of solidify themselves, not only as playoff contenders, but maybe even a chance in a pretty even keel conference to maybe even win a couple of rounds. It's hard to say. Things can change in a hurry in the Eastern Conference. It doesn't really look right now that any one team is really ready to run away with it. So it's open. Teams are going to want to see their opening and take it. And this could be an opportunity for them to call Doug Armstrong and do some business. So let me know your thoughts on that possibility in the comments. What would the asking price be? Does it make sense? Should they do it? Let me know in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with the latest news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.